Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trucked Before. This time we're back on Voyager. Death Wish. Yeah, Death Wish. Not the Chuck Bronson movie. Not the Chuck Bronson movie, but a Death Wish all the same. Death Wish on It's All Been Trucked Before. Hey, if you have a Death Wish, become a Patreon member. Make that your Death Wish. Put that on your bucket list. And you know what? Take care of it right now. Go out to patreon.com/IBD. Get all the... We're about to do some extra special episodes coming up, our in-between season episodes. Get in on that. You get it now, and you can get the special episodes only the Patreon folks do, and you can get to see us. Now, once you do, that might make you have a Death Wish. This is Death Wish, Voyager, It's All Been Trucked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trucked Before. Your skeleton crew is here.
This is Steven.
This is Olivia James, and we're here to talk about the movie, or not the movie, the episode Death Wish. Not to be confused with the movie Death Wish, which was I mean, maybe. One of them, I don't remember which one, but one of them did have Marina Sirtis in it. So a little Trek connection there.
Oh, yeah. I'll cut to my alternate episode, which will tip my hand a little bit, but not too much, really. You listen to this podcast at all. It's Charles Bronson kills Q. That's what happens in that.
So Marina Sirtis was in Death Wish 3. Anyway, first impressions on the actual Voyager episode Death Wish.
I like Garrett Graham a lot. I'm usually not a big Q fan. I like Q when he's funny, or when they're funny, I guess. I thought, and so I laughed out loud several times in this episode. I like I said, I found Garrett Graham very engaging as an actor and a performer, and so I enjoyed what he did in it, and I liked it, and I looked afterwards. I think I liked, and I said this before, I like the more, when Q's fun, I like it. When it gets serious, I'm not as interested. This one, I laughed a lot. Like I said, I thought it was one of those where you've got a very false construct to get us there. And I feel like all the Q stuff is, but I know it adds to the lore and it kind of builds the continuum a little, or this continuum thing, or this Q-verse a little bit more. So some of that worked for me and some of it didn't, and we'll get more into that. So overall, I think I liked it. I started off being like, I am going to hate this episode, even though I love Garrett Graham. And then it kind of came around, we get into some questions I feel like we've gotten to recently, especially in this era of Star Trek, a lot of, right to die and Kevorkian kind of stuff. But,
yeah,
and whenever it's like, here we go, we're in a courtroom, it's weird. Star Trek, I think, does an interesting job. I think it and every time it feels like a false construct, whether it's court-martial or menagerie or Measure of a Man. I'm leaving out the one where they accuse Riker of murdering the woman, and I should have that title memorized.
Perspective, Stephen.
What's that? Oh, how could I possibly? I
don't know. We only said that title more than any other title.
I send your complaints to Keith at iabd.com, 80%.com. But yeah, overall, I think I liked it, and then, I always go to see what everyone, and I feel like this is a very well-regarded episode. I don't think I'd go that far to say I loved it, but I liked a lot of it. And, the questions are interesting. And again, I think Garrett Graham plays it convincingly. And I think, when we get to the end of the episode, when we're done with the fun and games and we go through the whole, it's very arbitrary and capricious, this whole episode, to use a legal term, but the whole thing is we're talking about fake sci-fi stuff. But I thought John Delancey and Garrett Graham and Kate Mulgrew at the end especially really, I think they wrap it up very nicely, even though I feel like there's some missteps along the way. So I wouldn't call it a home run, maybe a double, but lots of stuff to chew on and lots of fun stuff too. But we'll get into the minutiae as we go on. But that was a very long first impression. So.
That was. I liked it a lot. I thought it raised a lot of interesting questions and didn't give firm, clear answers. Even Janeway's answer was like caveated 8 different ways to Sunday.
Yeah.
And appropriately so, right? Like there's not a clear answer when life or death's on the line. Definitely almost got a little heavy-handed on the societal mirror in this one, which is fine. I didn't mind that. I mean, that's in the tradition of old Star Trek. right? I
Sure.
mean, we'll talk about a specific example for sure, but a little bit preachy there, but also like, I don't think you come down thinking that there is a true black and white answer to this question, which I appreciated.
Yeah, that's
I think
a good point.
I think the story might have been slightly stronger if Quinn, I'm just going to call him Quinn for ease because we have
Yeah.
Q,
Yep.
and Quinn
Yep.
was his name at the end. If Quinn had not been a member of the Q Continuum, or like it just been some other powerful being, because we've had enough of those in Star Trek, or if he was a
Uh-huh.
member of the Q Continuum, but we never roped in John Delancey's Q into it, I think it might have been a more clear
Yeah.
cut story. Instead, in retrospect, what it feels like is the start of something because the end of this episode leaves a very big promise of more to come in a way that was very different
Hmm.
from Q's appearance in Deep Space Nine, where Cisco slugs him and you're like, yeah, Q's never coming back. On this,
Yeah.
he basically promises to come back, and he will. He will be
Yeah.
back.
Okay.
And the ramifications of the end of this episode will play out in Voyager. It's not like, oh, we've forgotten all about the court case and Q's
Okay.
like come to Jesus moment. That will continue. That will not just be forgotten when Q's
Okay.
subsequent appearances. And so that's where I don't say that Q's next gen story is better or worse because he served a much grander purpose in the next generation. I mean, the relationship between him and Picard were the linchpin, but there was a whole like humanity hanging in the balance question where in this show in Voyager it feels like a much more personal Q story, and his relationship with Janeway is quite different. And I mean, I guess there's still high stakes because the Q continuum is on the line, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, but the Q continuum is this ambiguous thing out there that we glimpsed once as a
Yeah.
rest stop, whereas like all of humanity is not ambiguous. It feels more
Right.
present. I mean, you could argue the collapse of the Q continuum could actually destroy every race in every universe. I don't know that for sure, but I'm so the stakes should actually be bigger, but they don't feel bigger. Q has a nice arc in Star Trek Picard too that I think is excellent and very personal. So that takes into account all of Q's trajectory as a character. So yeah, I guess
Well, I guess, yeah, I guess in the sense that, because to delve into the Star Wars part of it, some of it's kind of magic, and my feelings about, omnipotent, and they even use the word omnipotent in this episode, beings and everything, I don't care for it or whatever, but I do, but yeah, I think you make a good point about the end being kind of the beginning. We're moving to it. I'm fine with learning more about these guys, and to me, I go all the way back to Squire of Gothos, and like at the time that's just a one-off, and now it's like, okay, and really, I guess you could go back to Charlie X too, because we still don't know
I mean,
about the
I don't know
Q-ness of
that
that.
there's anything in canon that Charlie X is connected to the Qs because keep in mind, Charlie was born a normal human. We know that.
Right,
Um,
right.
Whereas it's pretty close to, if not fully confirmed, it's pretty close to confirm that Trelane was a Q. So that one feels
Yeah,
a little
yeah.
closer.
But
Certainly the
it is the
novels have
same
just run
device
with
at
that.
the end of the godlike creatures coming and like getting their kid or whatever. But
Right.
yeah.
So we'll get to all of that down the road. Like I said, very interesting episode for Q. I guess we could, since Riker's in this, the Death Wish alternate episode. This is not my alternate episode I wrote down, but it could be that Troy is brutally murdered and Riker has to go Avenger because
That's a good one. That's a good one. I
just because
mean,
she already has the
I don't
Death Wish
want
connection.
I obviously don't want Troy murdered, but that would be a fascinating, I guess for lack of a better term, alternate universe
Yeah,
episode, fiction, whatever. Yeah.
I agree. I don't want
I,
her murdered either, but
yeah. I feel
we
like if she was murdered though, it's definite that Riker would be go and find them
I think that's
and maybe
certain. I
get the
mean,
gang together.
well, we saw in All Good Things, the TNG series finale, that she had died, and it wasn't murder, but she died, and it screwed Riker up for life.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's definitely something to be said there. But anyway,
Yeah.
we start out with this strange comet that, and you almost think it's going to be a science mystery because it's like, ooh, there's a
Yeah.
comet, but it doesn't behave like a comet. We don't really know if it's a comet. And Chakotay has the line about it looks and feels and tastes just like a comet, and I'm like, taste? What the heck are you smoking, Chakotay? He must have just got out of one of his vision quests because that was confusing. So they beam a sample of the comet aboard. I don't quite get how that works because if you could
Yeah.
beam a sample of solid rock in other circumstances, I feel like it would have been used before. And instead, they're like, yeah, we're going to beam interior, a piece floating on the inside. So are they like, I don't know enough about astronomy, but are there actually like
Yeah.
inside a comet pieces of the comet floating?
Right. Yeah. I guess I don't know either. Like, I guess I need to do some cover research. It's been a while.
I mean, I'm sure they're not all necessary. Oh, it does say that comets have pieces of dust rock and frozen gases ice packed together inside the nucleus. So
Okay.
there are specific components inside a comet
Okay.
in the nucleus, which is where they took it from. So I guess there is some science there. I was
I always
confused,
think of
but the
comets as
confusion
being
is my ignorance. They were scientifically sound.
okay. I always think of comets as being like hot because they're going across the galaxy, but I know there's also ice and
I was gonna say I thought comets were cold because they're away from suns and stuff.
I feel like we as a society well, I think I'm thinking in like sports terms of comets, like maybe you know what? Maybe I think I'm the one attributing heat to it. But yeah, like icy small solar system body or interstellar object. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah. It says they become
Get
hot when they
warm and
pass near
begins to
the
release
sun and the
gases.
ice turns into a gas. Yeah.
Yep, yep, yep.
Yeah.
All right,
So,
there
but
we go.
all that's neither here nor there because it's not
Right.
like a real comet anyway because the chunk they beam aboard is not a chunk, it's Quinn, which he just introduces himself as Q, not Quinn.
Yeah.
I'm a little confused why the entire episode is wearing a Starfleet uniform with captain's pips on it. That doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like they decided they didn't have time to make him a new costume or budget, so they reached into the closet and said, "Well, we've seen a Q in a Starfleet uniform before, so let's just throw him in like a Riker outfit and add a
Yeah.
pip or something."
Yeah.
He walked right through the force field, introduced himself as Q, and I'm like, "You're not Q." Credits.
I just wrote,
They
oh,
come,
great, but yeah.
they come back from the credits, and once again, don't pay attention to the guest star credits on the screen because it's spoiled
Yeah.
so much. It said
Right.
guest starring Jonathan Frakes, guest Ben
Uh,
Delancey as Q, and I'm like,
uh,
dudes.
Paramount Plus, the picture preview had Riker in it, and I was like, maybe I remember us talking about it, but either way, so I knew he was going to show up, and I wasn't upset that Riker was going to show up, but a little bit of a yeah giveaway, obviously.
I mean, first of all, I think they should not have revealed John Delancey because his role was pretty large, but you're left with that mystery of this guy says he's Q, but there's no sign of our Q, and it would be nice to wonder for a minute if he was going to show up instead of knowing right from the beginning that he did show up.
Right.
And Riker would have been such a fun surprise if they had not
Mm-hmm.
included him in that.
No, I didn't know what capacity he was going to show up, but
Sure, but the fact
still,
that you know he's going to show up at all is
yeah,
like wouldn't it be better if you weren't expecting it and all of a sudden he's just there and you're like,
yeah, yeah.
this was, I'm pretty sure, Riker's one and only appearance on Voyager. So, as brief as it was,
Okay.
one and done for Commander William Riker. Far from his
I
only appearance in Star Trek, not even
Yes.
of this era, we still have more, and that's, I mean, he'll be on Enterprise, so, he's
When
going to be
he
around.
when he and Janeway exchanged pleasantries, I very much enjoyed that. That was very yeah, what do you want to call it? Fan service or whatever. It warmed my heart. I enjoyed that very much. Yeah, to beat the dead horse, like I was excited to see Riker as much as like we've been like, our TNG feelings of, going back and forth. I love Riker. So actually love all those guys, but yeah.
Totally agree with all that. I'd say complaints about it. Too short appearance. Didn't matter a
Yep.
lot. They already
Yep.
made very clear before he shows up that he's not going to remember anything, which is disappointing because you should have that
Yeah.
moment of like, oh, he can go back and tell Starfleet what's happened.
Yeah. Well, see, in that scene, when the three of them show up, I'm like, all right, I'm already laughing. I've been laughing. Let's keep this party going. Let's make it funny. And I was enjoying that. And then they're like, nope, they're gone. And we're back to the serious stuff, which again, some good heady stuff. But if it had been a comedic episode all along, I would have been very happy to see where that went.
Disappointed that that Riker's involvement was just learning about his ancestor Thaddeus Riker, because in my mind, if they're bringing people to testify about the Q continuum, the fact that
Right.
Riker was temporarily a Q should have been what he was there to talk about.
Yeah.
Do you remember the
Yeah.
episode where Riker got the Q powers?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right? So if you're going to bring
Yeah.
Riker into this, that's exactly what it should be about. And they don't even mention it.
I like the brushes with Q sequence as well. So, and well, at first I didn't like it, and then I was like, you know what? This is actually I do kind of like this, because at first, I will say this also, early in the episode, I got very like, Q's, and then I was like, then I just relaxed. I was like, you know what? Whatever. I'm just gonna let it happen. And I felt much better about the episode. Then went right back to being serious after I was like, I'm ready. Hit me with this. But to that point, so to that point, I was like, yeah, I enjoyed these brushes with Q, and but at first I was like, this isn't canon, and I was like, who cares? I don't care. It doesn't matter. It's funny. It's interesting.
What do you mean it's not canon?
No, it is. Oh no, in my brain I was like, this isn't canon. This doesn't count. And I was like, you know what? It does, and who cares? This is actually interesting, because I mean, it gets because it starts building because at some point they mention humanoid. One of the Qs, I think, Q, not Quinn, I think mentions the whole. He emphasizes humanoid, and so it's like, okay, between them and the Odo's people, and then the other people that seeded the galaxy. We've got maybe. I guess they're probably all interrelated. Like we've talked about Apollo or Adonis, who mourns for Adonis. Similar track, but
yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they're related or not.
Yeah,
but yeah, I did get echoes of.
It's a big universe.
I did get echoes of Odo's people, the founders, in the way they describe the continuum. That we all get to decide, and we're all a body. Felt very changeling opportunity.
This may be another thing I just forgotten over time. Was Q always the sexist?
Well, yes.
Okay.
He didn't interact with the women a lot, but he did make comments in TNG that revealed him to be sexist.
And this is my thing, and I guess it makes sense really when you think of the universe and everything else, but it's like, wait a minute, you're supposed to be the higher power and you're sexist? How enlightened can you be? But a lot of the people who run things are sexist, so as we've learned over time. So
towards the beginning, we find out that this Q, Quinn, wants to die. Janeway's confused because she thinks it's Q as we know him, but it's a different Q. And I guess when they sent all that information out to everybody in Starfleet to warn them about Q, they didn't think to include a picture, apparently.
Right.
Or she just thought, well, he must look different because he showed up in different outfits, so maybe he just looks old now. I don't know.
Maybe she just heard talk, subspace chatter, and hadn't actually seen documents.
Starfleet sent reports to all the captains.
Okay, there you go.
Q. So there was a little bit of confusion with timeline here because Quinn talks about how he said 300 years locked up to consider his death. And then later he talks about how inspired he is by Q's actions in TNG just a couple of years ago. And so that made me wonder, is he may not be out of the comet, but is he still privy to the workings of the continuum and what's going on? It sounds like he is. Either that or he just caught up his brain. He just caught up on all current events in the blink of an eye when he got out, which is also possible because we don't know what all Qs can do. So I think there's a few different possibilities here of how to explain that. It just feels a little bit like, oh, this timeline's a little shaky. But yeah. So then he tries to off himself, and what happens instead is all the men on the ship disappear. Did that seem like that should be a bigger deal and not just be resolved in 5 seconds later?
I knew it would be resolved quickly. I'm trying to think of the line. What's the line? I think it's Q does the line about, trying to think of what his line about everyone, all the men being gone. Oh, the Valkyries. Say, is this the ship of the Valkyries? Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Or have you human women finally done away with your men altogether, which I think might be I'm forgetting the play, but it's the one where the women are like, we're not going to have sex with you until you stop doing war. That makes me think of that one. Candide, or is it?
Not sure.
I'm mixing up my Molières, but anyway. But again, I thought there were a lot of really good little lines like that, and I wrote down several. I didn't write down that one, but I like that line. At least there was some funny stuff. But yeah, I was like, they'll be right back. But it is an interesting premise, and and this is some of the arbitrariness. Is like our guy Quinn had all these powers, but he couldn't quite figure out stuff. And my overriding thing, and we kind of get to it eventually, and it's and I was thinking it, and then we get there, which is if we're hopping around all over, and Quinn's taking them to all these places, like why don't you just take them to Earth? And then Q uses it as if you do this, I'll do it. And I'm just like, why wouldn't Quinn just say the same thing? Like, I'll get you guys home. And I think the fact that Q does it just to Janeway makes it more like it's more of a gut punch than if it's the whole ship, then it's Gilligan's Island. But he's just like, I'll get you back to Earth. And I guess, which is another question. I know Janeway ended up not doing it, but I guess she that was answered. Yeah, she didn't do that. She was like, no, I got to do this thing. So,
well, I think Janeway was able to compartmentalize. I'm like, I'm not going to let this bribe influence my decision.
Mm-hmm. Well,
but it would be very hard to not.
It.
It would be very hard to put that completely out of your mind and not justify, like, oh, well, I'm going to make the decision Q once, and I can justify it another way and still get the crew home.
Yeah.
That would be hard to do, but she's a good leader.
Yes.
Q says humans aren't supposed to be out in the Delta Quadrant for another 100 years. Spoilers, apparently. But then, keep in mind, we know he threw the Enterprise D into the Delta Quadrant years ago to introduce them to the Borg, and the Borg get brought up multiple times. And I was waiting for them to mention that the Borg were in the Delta Quadrant, but that is where they are. And I know we didn't need the mention in the show because fans were already, from the time Voyager premiered, going, oh, they're Delta Quadrant, when are the Borg going to show up, when are the Borg going to show up, when are the Borg going to show up? And they will. But this is the first time we even get mentions of them, right? We're going to have to travel through Borg territory, so we're going to get plenty of the Borg. In fact, half this show. So Deep Space Nine had almost, not quite, but almost half a show before we got to the Dominion Wars. Voyager's going to have a similar trajectory until we get to everything is Borg for a long time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Q mentions Riker before he brings him in there, which is like, I expected William Riker to be captain or something. And I'm like, wait, why are you expecting William Riker to be captain of the small science vessel instead of the Enterprise D?
Right.
I don't understand. But Q does insult, basically says you must be lost because you have a woman captain. Which plays into sexist, as we said, but also very...
Yeah, and he says the one line that I like, but then I was like, should I? He says, you're angry when you're beautiful. And which I like turning that, but I was also like, is saying you're beautiful when you're angry, it feels sexist and condescending in my mind now. I used to find it funny because my dad said it all the time.
He didn't say you're beautiful when you're angry. He said you're angry when you're beautiful.
Angry when you're beautiful. That's why I like the twist.
I do too, but also she's beautiful all the time, not just when she's angry.
Well, that's true too. So it's a phrase I don't know the last time I saw it or heard it. Like I said, I've definitely seen it in all kinds of media, but my dad said it a lot to my mom. And he actually usually said it when she wasn't really angry. If she was really angry, he wasn't talking that nonsense. And it's something I've said, but now I'm like, I don't know. I feel like it. I don't know if it's necessarily sexist, but it might be. It feels like it is. And
yes, it is.
I've always just used it as a laugh line. I've also always used it. I sure as hell have not used it in the middle of an actual fight. There's no way I would ever say that in the middle of a fight.
Yeah.
An actual fight or actual anger. In the middle of a debate about something, I might, but that's more, I need to self-examine what's going on with that phrase. But again, I don't know the last time I used it for that matter. It probably, maybe not this century, to be honest. So anyway, I liked when Quinn starts jumping them around, back to the Big Bang and that stuff. I
outside the
actually really like that.
universe. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I love when they're and it was cheesy, but I also loved it when they're the ornament on the tree because I thought it was
When they were the
very
ornament of the tree,
meta.
I wanted to see Picard and his family that we saw in the Nexus. Because we
Oh yes,
just had a movie with the Christmas tree.
yeah, yeah. I would have loved seeing more people, and I just thought I love, and I feel like the Enterprise is always, whether it's cat's paw or whatever, you always see it dangling and as an ornament and stuff. So I enjoyed that, and I also this is, and I didn't do any half-ass internet research to look into this, but it this is Star Wars ripping off Star Trek again. I think because one of the things I didn't like but did like about Rise of Skywalker, my least favorite Star Wars movie, least favorite Star Wars thing, period, probably. But there's a period in that movie where they're hyperspace jumping like just repeatedly, like very easily, and it just shows all these different places they're flying through. It doesn't seem plausible of course we're talking about a fantasy sci-fi film, but it doesn't seem plausible. But the last time I watched it with the Star Wars Minute guys, 1 minute at a time, that scene though was a lot of fun to watch because it's like, oh, in a different place, in a different place, in a different place, and I enjoyed that about this as well. And then I think, and I definitely believe J.J. Abrams could have seen this and stolen this or borrowed it, whatever. But it's actually one of the things it's one of the few things I really like about that movie. I like it in execution. I don't like the concept of it, but as a person watching a screen, it's good stuff. So
Yeah. So the debate that Janeway is having is basically life in prison for eternity or allowing him to do suicide. I do think that's a
yeah,
little bit different than our society of debating life in prison versus execution because the eternity makes it mean something different, right?
yes,
But there's
yeah,
still a certain connection to, and they
hmm,
bring it up more directly when they're like, how can a society outlaw suicide but still practice capital punishment as
yeah,
ours does? And that's
yes,
where I get into the weeds because I'm like, first of all, I don't think we should have capital punishment. I am in favor of abolishing capital punishment, primarily because of how often we get it wrong. If we
yeah,
knew with 100% certainty that everybody that was
yeah,
sentenced to death was guilty, I I wouldn't love it, but I'd be less against it. I'd be like, well, I
I,
don't think we should,
yeah,
but I at least understand it. But when we know we get it wrong so often,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
inexcusable that we still do it.
I
Inexcusable.
think I think our last Death Wish episode, or Kevorkian episode, I can't remember who it was that wanted to die, and we had our people had the debate. But yeah, when I started law school, I was probably starting to get on the fence already, but I think I might have mentioned this on that podcast that one of the elements of capital punishment or any kind of punishment for a crime is retribution, and so it's that. But as you said, but my problem very quickly was like, and I thank one of my law school professors who his job, and I think it's still his job, is he defends death row guys, and that gave me a different perspective. And then just reading any amount of literature, actually a couple of law school professors that pretty more, I wouldn't say specialized, but they're experts on it. And just as you're saying, it's if retribution doesn't work if you're not sure about whether that's the right, or if it's done unevenly, or and we know justice isn't even enough. And so again, to your point, the fact that we know justice is uneven, we can't. That's got to be off the table. It's got to be off
And
the
yet we
table.
still do it.
We do,
On the other hand,
and I know. And the thing
assisted
is,
suicide. Yeah.
people are like Ted Bundy should be killed. It's like, well, duh, yeah, he should be, but that's not the guy that's always getting killed. It's this guy. So, and
That's
I
the
don't want to
thing.
pay for that guy to be in prison. It's like, okay, but still,
That's the thing.
that's
If
a
you have
worse
an
punishment to me. Which is part of the argument here. Is like,
right,
isn't that a worse punishment? You got to
if you
live
have
with
an
this.
if you have an irredeemable psychopath that will
Yeah,
never feel guilty, never learn from mistakes,
yeah,
and can't be
yeah.
rehabilitated, and you know with certainty that they're guilty, because I would make allowance that there could be an unredeemable psychopath out there who doesn't do anything
Sure.
wrong because he knows better. And of course, it's going
Yeah,
to be a he because he knows better,
yeah.
or just doesn't. It's not a danger to society. So even that, like, you're still, even if you know
Well,
they're
and
a
again,
psychopath, that doesn't justify
yeah.
killing them. No,
if they're asking for death like Quinn here, okay, then we have a conversation. But
that's a
another
whole different
and
thing.
another part of, or at least it's supposed to be, and it happens sometimes, but I don't think our system's built this way, not in America at least for sure, is rehabilitation. And that's such a small part. We're all about incarceration, the retribution, and that's part of the retribution too. But that doesn't help with the rehabilitation, and that
Well, we have so many reoffenders. If we would focus on
yeah,
rehabilitation, that number would go way
hmm
down. We also
yeah,
know we also know that most criminals age out of criminality by the time they get in their 30s. So keeping
yeah,
them in prison for
yeah,
decades is generally
yep,
pointless too. Like
yep, yep,
if they're going to age out of it anyway. So
yep,
that's my problem. We have so many problems with the justice system. But the other end of that
yes,
coin, the assisted suicide slash euthanasia argument,
hmm
I do believe it should be reserved for somebody that's terminal,
yeah,
incurable, no hope of being cured. I did not have an opinion on it really until my grandfather was dying and I sat there and watched him die for 3 days after he became
hmm
unresponsive. And there's no reason we should make somebody sit there and suffer like that when
hmm
we let our pets, we spare our pets the suffering, but we're not going to spare
hmm
our family members the suffering?
hmm
Bull.
hmm
Bull crap.
absolutely,
That's the part that I get really frustrated on that regard. Now, assisted suicide is slightly different if you're not terminally
hmm
ill, and Quinn was not ill. He was not going to die, but he argued that his ability to live forever
yeah,
was the condition. And in that specific instance, I think you have to listen to what he's
yeah,
saying because
yeah,
there's no escape, and that in a way is being trapped, is being out of your control. I mean, I have to side with Quinn from a moral standpoint pretty early in this
yeah,
episode. Even though Janeway's decision, I think, is much more up in the air, and I would not blame her for
hmm
going either way. But in terms of should Quinn be allowed, absolutely. And
yeah,
that is essentially what Janeway comes down to. But given all of the other things around it, I get why it's not an easy decision for her. That she's going to have that
yeah.
weight on her. And so, no shame at all to Janeway for taking as long as she does to make the decision she does.
Well,
Even though
it
that's the
gives
only decision you can make at the end.
yeah, it gives the writers, or the writers, I guess, gave themselves the ability to kind of talk from both sides. Although it's kind of a shifted argument, just with the different elements here. But yeah, it does make it more interesting. And Janeway's decision is great because I wasn't sure she was gonna side with Quinn, and there are times where I was like, I don't know if I liked what you're saying right now, Janeway, because I thought she was definitely going with, well, we can't do this, but I do understand her being like, I mean, she gives the life is precious argument, but not really. She gives the your life feels important, everything you've seen, everything you've known, all the things. But I knew as soon as he's in as soon as he's like they're trying to figure out what he's going to do on the ship. I'm like, he's not going to be around. And some of that was spoiled by Wikipedia, but I would have I guessed that either way. But and it's weird because it's tragic ending, but it's also like good for him that he's. And I always say this: I'm a narcissist, so I think immortality would be great, but I'm never going to get a shot at it. So
I mean,
at least I don't think
so
so.
yeah. I mean, Riker once said as he told Picard at the end of Generations, he planned on living forever.
Yeah.
I would say in terms of that, I lost my train of thought. I had something good there. I swear I did. Oh, Quinn staying. So I
Yeah.
agree with you that it seemed pretty obvious that he wasn't going to stay, even though that was not a true alternate episode, but just kind of put down there alternate episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
The reason I think they played it a little bit ambiguous, and the reason there was hope that he might have stuck around, I think, was Q's promise to return. Like, if Q says I guess that
Oh,
kind of
right.
happened right at the end, after we already know he's dying. But if we think Q's going to return, then Quinn could be a good hook to get him to return. Like, maybe there's some last minute save. It seems really weird to me the doctor can't save him from ingesting hemlock. Like, they can't pump his stomach or something. I feel like that's
Right.
not a rough enough. That's not a rough
24th
enough
century
thing
seems like,
to be
yeah.
saved from. I feel like the doctor
Yeah.
should be able to save him. It would have been more
Yeah.
interesting if the doctor say, "Yeah, I could save him, but he signed a DNR, and my programming doesn't
Right.
allow me
Right.
to save
Yeah.
him."
Oh, that's an
That
interesting
would have
take.
been,
'Cause-
and that could have just been a 30-second where Janeway's like, "You have to," and the doctor's like, "I'm literally not possible. If you can do it, great." And Janeway's like, "I don't know how." So I think that would have been cool. But yeah,
Because then you're into the true, literally the Dr. Kevorkian Hippocratic Oath versus, yeah,
yeah, respect the patient's wishes.
yeah,
So jumping way back because we
yep.
got ahead of ourselves there. When it
Sorry,
comes to
yeah,
writing, though, I do it. No, no, you're good because it was a stream of consciousness that worked really well. It naturally flowed. I'm just saying we're talking end of episode again. I've got lots
yes,
under.
yep, yep, me too. Me too.
But I do want to say with the writer, because you mentioned who was writing this.
Yeah.
It's teleplay by Michael Piller, our showrunner at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Story by a man named Sean Piller. Any
Huh.
relation? It's his son. It's Michael Piller's son. He got to
Oh,
write two
wow, okay.
episodes of Voyager. He got to write 2 episodes. So
Hey,
that's pretty cool. One of our regular
sometimes Nepo
directors,
babies
James
work out
O'Connell.
pretty good. I know we're supposed to be mad about Nepo babies, but sometimes it works out.
Well, and also Sean Piller, if you look at his IMDb resume, he has other credits. He's been a producer on
Okay.
The Dead Zone for 81 episodes. He was a producer on Wildfire for 52 episodes. Producer on Private Eyes for 40 episodes. Wildfire, was that the one? Yeah, Wildfire stars Nana Visitor. Was one of the stars of that. I did remember that.
Okay.
So he worked with her. He only has these 2 Voyager credits, but he has 13 different shows he's been a producer on, 6 different shows he's been a writer on. He did have his first writing credit was the episode Journey's End, which was Wesley Crusher's last episode of TNG. He's got
Okay.
based on Pawn material for. So he gave the basis of that, and then he wrote Voyager. And then he went on to write a TV movie and co-create The Dead Zone and co-create it. Yeah, so he has some things. He's also a director. And by this point, he was already in his 20s. He wasn't, newborn. So,
Yeah.
I think this was probably good. I'm not upset about it. But, was married to Lindsay Price for a while. Not anymore.
That's what I just came across. I'm like, oh, hey, good for him.
Quinn goes to Tuvok, and part of the reason he goes to Tuvok is apparently Vulcans have ritual suicide when they reach a certain age.
Yeah.
I don't feel like we ever hear about that again or explored at all. I mean, even we already watched Sarek suffering needlessly through his disease, and he didn't do ritual suicide. So I don't know what it takes to get to that.
It threw me into is there something I forgot about? Is it a real thing? It feels like a thing that Vulcans would do, like the Native Americans, just walking off into the woods, or the Aleutians, or I think we can say Eskimos. I can't remember, but you just get on an iceberg and you float out into not an iceberg, an ice floe, and float out. But I wrote down, I thought that was interesting because it's a TNG trope. I'm giving TNG credit for this, that they just deputize somebody like, hey, you're my attorney. It happens. I know it's Picard, but I feel like it happened to, I feel like Riker did it once.
I think so.
Yeah,
he did it for Data.
Yeah, and I again, I'm not mad about it. I enjoy these, courtroom episodes. This one's tricky. Not tricky. It's tricky because usually I'll put on my legal hat. In this case, it's like this isn't really a legal stuff. It's just there's no legal basis here. And once you're into Q territory, there's no real well, this is the way this would work.
Yeah, Samuel T. Cogley would have been wasted in this instance.
Yeah, but I like the idea that, and maybe this makes me like the Q more in a theory, is if it's the Continuum has this thing where they have to honor certain laws, even though they don't honor a lot of them, but there's certain laws they have to honor. I don't know, or maybe it was just Q wanted to go through the process with Quinn to figure. And again, I'm jumping to the end of the episode, but we kind of get to where he's like, yeah, I kind of learned some stuff here. And so maybe he was like, I want to learn some stuff too, but that's why he let this happen. So
maybe. There are 2 Qs at this point in the episode, and they accuse Quinn accuses the Continuum of being afraid of the unknown, which makes the Qs feel more accessible and relatable than they ever have before, right? Because we're all afraid of the unknown. That's just part of existence. And I like that
Uh-huh.
for all their power, they still have that vulnerability, for sure. They talk about that Quinn was a philosopher, which makes a lot of sense that a philosopher would be the one to make
Yeah.
these stands.
Yeah.
Q Continuum tries to control disruptive elements, and they argue social order versus anarchy, which is such an interesting thing to argue because you absolutely have to put social order ahead of anarchy when it matters. But I also feel like
Hmm.
that's something that's easily and often used as an excuse when it doesn't need to be. I do think
Yes.
society should strive to be as free as it can be,
Hmm.
even with the caveat that sometimes it can't be. The default should
Hmm.
be the freedom of the individual, right? Only when it's absolutely necessary do you go against that. So Riker, Newton, and Ginsburg appear. We know who Riker is, and he mentions the Borg. Like I said, some
Yes.
great Borg references. Thaddeus Riker, very interesting because that name is going to come up again in Star Trek Picard, but not in the same context, and it's not his ancestor we're talking about. So
Okay.
Thaddeus will come back up, and it's been recent enough that I was like, oh, his ancestor was named Thaddeus too? That's interesting. So we'll get to that stuff. But Thaddeus Riker, we'll hear again. Sir Isaac Newton was
Yeah.
was played by Peter Dennis. He didn't have a lot to do, so I find it really hard to decide if he did a great job or not. But he was best known for
Yeah.
Shrek, voicing Shrek.
Yep.
He does 2 episodes of Voyager. He plays an admiral later on down the road, like towards
Okay.
the end of the run. He was in Sideways. He was in
Yeah.
10-Inch Hero. Yeah, it's one of the last episodes of the series. He plays the admiral. His last credit was an guest episode of ER, because then he died in 2009. And that was a
Yeah.
2008 episode of ER, because I forgot ER was still on in 2008.
God,
So,
if I'd had to bet on that, I would have bet against that. Wow.
and two, I didn't
Um,
realize it overlapped with Grey's Anatomy so many years. And Grey's
well,
Anatomy's
yeah,
not getting it, but
I didn't realize that either. I thought it had been off the air, and they're like, no, it's still going. I'm like, what?
mm-hmm.
He also did. He was in the Summer of George episode of Seinfeld. He played, I believe, and it was hard to get a picture or specific description in my limited internet half-ass. I'll borrow from Bill Simmons, half-ass internet research, but he played Lou. So in that episode, Kramer is a seat filler. So when somebody gets up at the Tonys, he fills the seat, and he accidentally gets up when the Scarsdale Surprise wins the Tony Award, and he goes up with the producers. Scarsdale Surprise, starring Raquel Welch, and goes up there, and then eventually they want it back. But he was one of the producers, and there's scenes of them partying afterwards and everything, and then they come back looking for it and whatever. So yeah, that was Peter Dennis. So
He
I
also guest
enjoyed him
starred.
again. I wanted more. I wanted more of those guys.
Yeah, he guest starred in an episode of Felicity where he played Star Wars fan, according to IMDb.
Yes,
He
yeah,
was
I saw
also
that.
He was also active in 1965 is when he started being active, so it's almost
Wow.
surprising and a little disappointing he wasn't in the original series because he was an active
Yeah,
working guest star at that point. Isaac
yeah,
Newton was interesting. The little joke about that Quinn basically caused the apple to fall was fun.
yeah.
Maury Ginsburg, however, I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole because as soon as I heard Ginsburg, my mind's like, oh, Allen Ginsburg. And then like,
Right.
no, Maury Ginsburg.
I,
Did you look into this at all?
all I know is the actor has the same name.
He does. So let me
Yeah,
educate you a little bit because I did the
yeah.
research briefly here. So apparently it was supposed to be Cal Ripken Jr. was the character,
Oh wow.
which would have been interesting. And
Yeah.
they couldn't get Cal Ripken Jr. to play himself. They hired Maury Ginsburg, and then the producers, I think it was Michael Piller, was basically like, well, let's just name the character Maury Ginsburg. And the whole story about Woodstock and the redhead, total fiction, made up by Michael
Okay.
Piller. It's nothing to do with the real Maury Ginsburg. But the real Maury Ginsburg is indeed an actor
Mm-hmm.
from LA, of course. He has 59 acting credits, best known for Last
Yeah.
Days of Ptolemy Gray, Manifest, What We Do in the Shadows, just one episode, and doesn't even have a name,
Mm-hmm.
and 5 episodes of Jessica Jones.
Yeah.
So he is still active, at least as of 2025. And
Yeah.
it must have been so weird to play this like hippie Woodstock version of himself when the actor is on record of saying he did not go to Woodstock. So,
I enjoyed it, and I thought I thought they were going to say not Coachella. I thought they were going to say Altamont, but even though Woodstock's the obvious choice, I thought they
I
were
thought
going
they
to
were
name
going to say
some
the
other
Fire
festival.
Fest. I thought it was going to be the Fire
Oh,
Fest.
that-
And it was the opposite. They sabotaged it by making sure he couldn't plug in the equipment.
I think
Um,
sabotage, but yeah.
I love that Janeway like takes one look at him, the hippie thing, and she's like, "This is just a dream." Instead of trying to convince him, like it skimmed over so quickly. But I'm like, what a fun writing moment. They also
Yeah.
mentioned that Isaac Newton, if he hadn't discovered gravity, would die in jail accused of murdering prostitutes. So I did check to see
Yeah.
if there was any real rumors to that. Apparently
Yeah.
not.
There
That's
wasn't.
just Voyager.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So him discovering gravity kept him on the straight and narrow. That's funny.
Right, right. The prostitutes is what
Well,
would have happened, we assume, but he didn't do it because he discovered gravity.
and maybe that's a nod to Wolf in the Fold and Jack the Ripper.
Maybe. I don't know.
Now I'll back up a little. The part where Q interrogates himself on the stand.
Oh my God, so
Uh,
ridiculous.
it even then it looked cheesy in the '90s effects, but whatever. I'll to quote Janeway, I'll allow it.
I wish he had gotten in out of his chair because the effects did look terrible. Uh,
Yeah, they did.
they maybe if they ever update Voyager to Blu-ray, which would be great, HD, they could
Hmm.
fix it. But we've seen actors play doubles before, Brett Spiner most notably, and I don't know if
Yeah.
it's because they had him like standing behind the other Q for so much,
Uh-huh.
but it looked so fake them being in
Yeah.
the scene together.
Yeah.
So they in the trailer they're talking about quality of life in the comet, which leads to that really fun scene where the four of them are smashed into the tiny hole in the comet. Janeway, Tuvok,
Yes.
Q, and Quinn. That's good. Janeway seems to be leaning towards no to Quinn at this point,
Right.
despite the comment. And Tuvok mentions that he doesn't agree with Quinn, even though he's representing him, and that felt very
Hmm.
Spock-like. That
Yes.
Spock would do
Yeah.
that.
And it's very what attorneys should do. We're supposed to. Doesn't mean you have to take every case, but if you are representing someone, you can represent someone who you find reprehensible. But even the most reprehensible among us deserves representation. That's part of our code. Speaking of codes, so yeah, and I very much enjoyed Tuvok and Tim Russ as Tuvok as an attorney. Actually, I wrote at least one of his lines. He says, "So your entire basis for judging a mentally unbalanced is his wish to commit suicide. I submit that is a faulty premise." To which I was like, "And how?" To which I was like, "This entire episode is a faulty premise." But again, like I said, I enjoyed it nonetheless. But I like that line.
I don't agree with the entire episode being a faulty premise, but I do
Not the
agree with
entire episode.
the
Faulty
Tuvok's.
premise is wrong. False construct to an extent, yes, but I think they make it work here better than some other episodes, a lot of other episodes. The Million Balance stuff, I thought that was actually an interesting conversation there too about what
Yeah.
constitutes that, and then we get into the thing of like, well, hey Q, you did this thing, you had your own issues, and it kind of leads to that reawakening of Q used to fight against the continuum instead of doing this other nonsense or whatever.
Well, I feel like that was so easy to forget in this episode. Like when
Mm-hmm.
Q shows up to represent the continuum, I had forgotten, but that was like an actual plot of a Star Trek TNG episode. Like it was.
Yeah.
I like that this in a way was a sequel to that,
Mm-hmm.
and I like that it was almost a correction on the character because Q in the end of TNG seemed to have left that part behind, and I love that the
Mm-hmm.
Pillars took a moment to say, "Hey, this doesn't quite add up. Let's talk about it and find a story for it."
Yeah.
Janeway trying to reason with Q was really good because it felt for a minute like she thought she got the upper hand with him, which of course she didn't. Like Picard would sometimes think he got the upper hand too, and sometimes he sort of did, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes he sort of didn't. And I think Janeway made some good points there. I like that she did his research and says like you're many things, mainly a pest, but you don't lie. I love that whole
Yeah.
thing. Q
And
dangles
that's
the Earth.
that's actually an important thing to establish as a principle because, like, always my problem with these beings is it's so arbitrary. But if you can be like, all right, they do many things, they don't lie. They
Right.
might be not good people. Their arguments might be nonsense at times, especially Q's to me. But if the deal is they don't lie, they might exaggerate or whatever, then that's a good attempt to establish that. So I like that.
So Vulcans don't lie, right? But Spock lies.
Right.
And granted, he's only half
I
Vulcan, but we've
exaggerate.
seen other Vulcans lie too.
Yes.
They don't say Qs don't lie. She says this Q doesn't lie.
This cute. Yeah.
And we will see this Q lie eventually, but I don't think it ever is a plot point like, oh my god, he lied, that's not like him. I don't think that happens. But I think she's
Yeah.
right up to this point we haven't seen him lie. And when we see him lie down the road, I think we can just assume without discussing it that his exposure to humans and what he'll go through in Voyager probably leads him to be a little more different than what he was before, right? He's going to go through some
Yeah.
stuff. But him dangling the Earth as a bribe, at that point, Janeway almost has to rule against him just to show impartiality. But that
Yeah.
in of itself, in retrospect, it could be that Q genuinely was offering a bribe. It could be that he was trying to bribe her to make sure that he lost. Because part of him didn't want the Continuum to win. I don't know. I'm just saying. There's some question in my mind about why.
Yeah, I started to go this way earlier, but like, so he's only offering her Earth, right? He's not offering the whole Voyager Earth.
Yeah, well, no, he does at one point say, like, you're the captain that brought the ship home. And there'd be a ticker tape parade and everything for you.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
think he's going to bring the whole ship home. But
See, that makes it trickier because I almost think
the good of your crew ahead the good of one Q.
I think I would.
I think Starfleet principles would not allow that.
I think I would.
The crew ahead?
Yeah, if I could get my crew home, yeah, I think I would. Although,
But would you sacrifice? I guess
I
we
also
could trolley
wouldn't trust-
problem this out.
also wouldn't trust Q.
I mean, I would see him giving them home, but I think she should clarify, like, the same time period. We're not going to mess with things that way.
Right.
Although I guess if
yeah,
he puts her in the wrong time period, they'll just slingshot around the sun. It'll be fine.
don't give me some Twilight Zone nonsense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that I don't trust him here. I just wondered if he had ulterior motives to sabotage himself. But
Yeah.
I don't know. There wasn't anything in there to make me think that was what was going on, but I don't know. Part of it was like, is this what's going on? So, whatever.
Yep. So they go, and I'm not sure. They go to what Quinn wants to be like. This is kind of what my existence is, or at least in terms that you can understand. And Janeway says, "I can't say I entirely understand what I'm seeing here." And I was like, "Yeah, you're right." But
well, that's the continuum.
Yeah, and I feel that way about the episode and the continuum. But
yeah,
I also, at that moment, but I also would say by the end of that whole scene, I think it does kind of make sense. I thought it made sense to me. I still, they touched a little bit on this weird thing that we've had in a couple other episodes where it's like, well, if you're not actually verbally talking, then it's not really communication, which I don't think that's true.
No.
But that's kind of where they went, I thought there, but that's later. But anyway, so yeah.
I mean, yeah, I don't know that it was a verbal thing. I thought it was just like, we've said everything there is to be said. There's no communication necessary.
That was the
everything.
point they were trying to make. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what it was, is there just was no, yeah. But the thing, did you like the portrayal of the continuum?
I thought for the way they were like, we're going to do this in a way you can understand, I did actually like it. And maybe there is an element of like, we always talk about TOS, like, oh, well, they had this backlot and they had this set, and so they got to use it. And I mean, that's all through Star Trek to an extent. But I did think in this instance, it did kind of convey what Quinn was trying to say, like, well, I don't know if I can do it justice, but so I'm going to do this to try and show what it is.
Well, and Q didn't argue. Like, Q was like, yep, this is what it is. Like, so I think it was pretty accurate. There were so many fun elements to this scene. You can say they used a backlot, and they did. I'm not arguing that. But they went out of their way to add all these little touches in production design that made it unique. Like, there was the never closes sign. There was the clock with no hands. There were the magazines, the old and the new. And then they talk about, I've been the dog, I've been the scarecrow, everyone's been the scarecrow. And it's just
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
what a great. And why have you been the dog? Because I could. Like, because I hadn't been. And so that just shows you they've done everything possible, right? Like, you were so bored, you were willing to be the scarecrow and just hang on the ball because you've done
yeah.
everything else.
And
So,
that's right before the Janeway line of I have to say I'm not completely understand what I'm seeing here, but eventually she does understand it. So and so did I. At least I felt it. So
yeah, I think so too. The Quinn appeals to Q, and there's a real inspiration there that Q was inspired by him. And like I said, I like coming back to that. We had the scene with Q in bed with Janeway. Have we had a scene with Q in bed with
yeah,
Picard? I feel like we have.
yes, yeah.
It felt to me like Q was cheating on Picard a bit in this episode.
It definitely felt a little creepy, and then he makes his peel like I know how to show a girl a good time. Outside of that, though, again, great evening wear for Janeway, fantastic. And I like that she felt the need to cover up. And I'm just like thinking, I'm thinking like Patrick Stewart in Extras, like Q's seen it all, baby. He's already seen it all, so it doesn't matter what you cover up. He's
No,
seen
but
it.
it's still very intrusive.
And it just makes it, she's just accessorizing even more. It's like, wait a minute, you've got this great pink, I can't think of the fabric, but and then she puts on the top over it. I'm like, this is just amazing. And of course, she looks great always. But
Do you think she should have gone for Q? Q was trying to seduce her here, like saying,
yeah,
forget
yeah,
Mark.
yeah,
And he had such an ego, and he
yeah.
offers her. Yep.
When he says forget Mark, that I got pissed off.
See, I thought, like, to me it made sense because he ran around with Vash for a while, and Janeway has a
Yeah,
similar adventurous spirit, a little more
yeah,
rule
yeah.
following.
Fair.
But yeah, of
It's
course,
fair.
she's not just going to forget Mark. But I like that we
Yeah,
got a mention of Mark again. I like that we know Janeway had a
yeah,
relationship.
yeah. Like I'm arguing against my Hawkeye thing of like you're 70,000 light years away from home, but also that's Janeway's. Yeah, I just thought that was stepped over line, which makes sense because Q does step over lines. Shows how committed he was to messing with her. He also says, and you referenced this earlier, how would you like a ticker tape parade down Sri Lanka Boulevard, which I thought was interesting because I don't know that that's an actual boulevard. I like would the ticker tape parade be in San Francisco or New York?
I don't know. I mean,
Was my other thought. And also,
they haven't had ticker tape parades in San Francisco, have they? Do they have enough? Do they have enough
you're right. They don't have
skyscrapers?
the can't think of the term. My brain's not working tonight either. This whole encounter does lead to the line later, which again, funny. There's a lot of funny lines for such a serious episode, so that's another thing I like about it. She says, "You've been in my chambers," and he's like, "Can we go to chambers and talk about this?" She's like, "You've been in my chambers enough," which I think is just a nice double entendre. And even though obviously she did not let him into her chambers, but I like the illusion there, and I thought that was very funny.
Yeah, absolutely. We haven't really talked about the actor that plays Quinn, Garrett Graham, best known for Phantom of the
Yeah,
Paradise, Child's Play 2, Now and Again, where he did 22 episodes, and Used Cars. He has 129 credits. Familiar face, not
yeah.
somebody that was like, I know who this is. He was in Gargoyles with
I
half the Next Generation cast.
Yeah, I saw him in a lot of early '80s, late '70s stuff. Used Cars, he's great in that. He was in a thing called. He was in one of those movies that was on pay cable when we first got it. National Lampoon's Class Reunion, and he's one of the leads in it, and he's very funny in it. And it's one of those like this isn't a great movie, but it's funny, and there's cute girls in it. I don't even remember if there's nudity in it. I think there's just a girl I really like in it. But I remember him from that, and then seeing him in other things. And then he played one of the clowns in
Seinfeld.
Seinfeld in the episodes where they're going to see Pagliacci and Crazy Joe DeVoe is there.
The
And yes. And Jerry's like, well, I had some money, but that guy over there took my quarter, which is another funny scene in the episode. And he's like, you could have just said no. You didn't have to insult me. He's like, no, they took my quarter. And so I had forgotten that was that until I looked at Garrett Graham's Wikipedia. I'm like, oh yeah, that's another place I saw him and enjoyed him. But yeah, and he was like Brian De Palma's early ensemble. I think they're still friends. And he wrote songs with Bob Weir, who just passed away from the Grateful Dead. So Very interesting dude, and I very much enjoyed him in this episode. I like at first you're like he's an idiot, and then you're like he's kind of fun, and then you're like, oh, he's serious. And I just think that's Garrett Graham. I thought I thought he hit it all. I thought he's probably my favorite Q. Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, because I found him. I
So
didn't find
far,
him annoying.
anyway. So
Yeah,
far,
yeah.
anyway, you haven't met Susie Plaxton as a Q. She'll be back as a
Okay,
Q.
that might change my yeah. Because
That'll change your mind. Knowing
I
how you feel
enjoy
about Susie Plaxton.
I enjoyed Trelane, but I got annoyed with him, and then just jumped way ahead to Strange New Worlds. You know what? That I guess that's Trelane too, but
It is true too, but also like perfect
it's
casting to preserve the
yeah,
continuity.
yeah. And actually he might be my favorite performance of a Q.
Yeah.
But I really like this one. I really like Garrett Graham there too. So
Well, he also was already in an episode of Star Trek. He was in Deep Space Nine.
yes,
Remember the episode in season one with the hunter and the prey? He was the hunter.
yes, yes,
So it wasn't a big role, but so Janeway, it's emphasized to her that she could change all of society. And man, she does more suspense than Simon Cowell in the early days of American Idol on how she's going to rule with the back and forth.
yes.
You think Simon Cowell was
Well,
inspired by this episode?
I was on the transcript page and it's long. It's a very long speech, but she as always Mulgrew does a great job with it. Hall of Heroes, I think, is what the ticker tape parades go through.
Okay.
Canyon of
So
Heroes, Canyon of Heroes.
I did
You can't
enjoy.
get that in San Francisco.
I enjoyed Q asking Janeway to talk to her in her chambers, and she's like, "You've been in my chambers quite enough." That was fun.
Yeah, I thought that was a great line.
But then, yeah, I liked Janeway's appeal to Quinn about you've never been mortal. This is a new experience. I think it was a pretty convincing appeal, even if it ended up not working out. I thought
Yeah.
she made a good case for it. So disappointed. But did you see coming that Q would be the one that gave Quinn the poison, the hemlock?
I did not. I did not. And so I thought that was until he beamed in or whatever, until he zapped
Yeah.
in, I did not see that coming. And then I thought that added some great gravitas and to it. And Delancey delivers it perfectly. That might be the most I've ever believed a thing that Q said. So yeah, I thought it was great.
Yeah,
Um,
it was sincere. It was interesting. It was something I didn't see coming, but it felt in character to the Q we know. And
yes,
just yeah, it was really I think the ending elevated this episode quite a bit,
totally,
personally.
totally.
So, and then again he says, "Oh, who says I certainly hope not." I didn't write down the context of that one. I don't remember,
Uh,
but he does say we will meet again to Janeway. So yeah, seriously good ending. My
he
alternate.
says. She says, I imagine the Continuum won't be very happy with you, Q. And he says, I certainly hope
Oh,
not. Au
yes, I
revoir,
liked
Madam
that because
Captain.
that was such a classic Q move. That baller devil
Mm,
may care, and we did not get that through most of this episode. So I was like,
yeah.
yes, go Q. I mean, you don't necessarily root for Q normally, but because
No.
in this case, the continuum sounds way worse. It's like,
Yes.
okay, I'm gonna root for Q now. I did
Uh,
not talk about my alternate episode, which was the Q Continuum was actually the Black Lodge from Twin Peaks. And everybody was talking backwards, and it was like a red room.
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It just felt so trippy in the music and everything. It just reminded me of very Twin Peaks, very weird and offbeat.
There is no Sri Lanka Boulevard. That is completely an invention of Star Trek.
I mean, you say now, but in the 24th century, there may very well be a Sri
That's
Lanka.
very true.
Who was your annoyance in Death Wish?
Q. Again,
I
I
mean,
ended up enjoying him, but at first I was just like, oh, come on. But I think they nailed the ending, but yeah, Q. Not Quinn, Q, Q.
yeah, I think the end justifies Q, and he's not annoying me,
Mhm.
but so much of what he does earlier, and I don't usually choose Q as my annoyance, but I would say, as much as I liked where this took him and how it ended up through a lot of the episode, And part of it is there's just no other character that was annoying. So I'm gonna
Yeah,
second
yeah,
your cue. Even though honestly, with that turn at the end, I would not have put him annoying if there was another option
yeah,
that
yeah.
seemed even reasonable
I
or
agree.
halfway
I
reasonable.
agree.
Who are you having a drink with?
Riker.
Of course. I was going to do Riker. I scratched it out and wrote Q. But again,
Yeah,
I'm specific to the Q at the end of this episode and the stuff he went
yeah,
through
yeah.
and what he's facing now.
I will say, just to back up, 2017, Den of Geek ranked Garrett Graham as the best guest star on Star Trek Voyager.
I
So,
mean, I thought it was a great performance. It was kind of
yeah,
understated in a lot of ways. So it
yeah,
wasn't one of
yeah,
those stand out like, oh my God, he's killing it.
yeah,
But if you think
yeah,
about it, yeah, he's really good.
yeah. I really like him.
Yeah. So who was was he your inspiring?
No, I guess he should be, but I'm going the. I know it's boring, but Janeway.
I very much wanted to lean towards Janeway because obviously the things she did in this were inspiring, and
Yeah.
her putting justice in front of the crew, getting home, and all of that
hmm
stuff totally makes sense to pick Janeway. I'm going to go with Quinn though because I think it takes a lot of courage to
Yeah.
buck the continuum, and given
Yep.
everything he went through and how hard he fought and the way he fought, and
hmm
he clearly did not have a plan going into it, which makes it even
hmm
more impressive what he did and what he was willing to risk because it wasn't a plan. It was just this is unjust and this has to stop.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm going with Quinn for sure.
Yeah. Good choice.
Ranking the episode
Mm.
with the caveat this has been a poor season so far.
Yeah.
I would like to start towards the top. I think.
I think so. 5 minutes in the episode, I would have said no way, but by the end, I was like, you know what, this probably is one of the better ones.
So while we're on the subject of TNG, let's compare it with Projections, the Barclay episode. Better or worse?
I think I'd go above.
I'm there with you. I
Yeah.
agree. I'm above as well. Above that is Resistance.
It's a little
That was a
closer.
really good episode. That was a really good
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah. I could probably go either way on that. Speaking of great guest star appearances, that's the other one I thought of immediately besides Garrett Graham when they were like, he's the
Joel Gray.
best. Joel Gray. Yeah, was good.
I think I want to go below Resistance because
Yeah.
Joel Gray gave such a powerful performance and how
Yeah.
tragic his ending was.
What is that number one for the season?
Resistance is number one.
Okay, that makes sense. All right.
So I'm very comfortable
Yeah.
with putting this number two. I think
Yeah.
that's a good
Yeah.
spot for it.
Yeah.
Next week, Deep Space Nine Ascension. A man claiming to be the emissary comes through the wormhole. Cisco is happy to give up his position. Meanwhile, Keiko returns and O'Brien stops spending time with Bashir. But if you want to just stick to Voyager, join us in 2 weeks for Life Signs, which the Doctor saves a Vidian. Remember the Vidians? Dying from the
I
phage
do.
by
Yeah.
placing her consciousness in a holographic body and then begins to fall in love with her.
Oh boy, I can't wait to
Yep.
see the guest star.
Yeah, you will. I think you'll be pleased, quite honestly. I could be wrong, but I think you'll be pleased.
I bet.
Seska does pop back up, but the main guest star is Susan Deal as Dr. Dinara Pell, and she's wonderful. So
Yeah.
she also has a Seinfeld credit, so we can talk about that next week. She was in in 2 weeks. She was in the season 3 episode The Nose Job, played Audrey.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think she was in the TNG episode. I think as the weird thing in space that destroys the planet that Riker's on and kills her character.
Let me see. I was trying to find real quick because Voyager is one of her best known floors. But yes, she was in an episode TNG Carmen de Villa, season 5,
Yeah.
Silicon Avatar. Oh yeah.
That's it. There it is. Yeah.
There it is. So anyway,
You know what? If you'd asked me, I would have said Silicon Avatar was like season 2 or 3. Season 5. Wow.
yeah, which was when
Oh,
the
well.
show was cooking there for a minute.
Yeah.
Well, until then, live long.
If you're into that sort of thing, and prosper.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's got the time?